Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michela. I am your host, and we are back today with another 30s roundup video or episode. I'm pretty sure at the time this is going up, I'm 2 weeks away from turning 30. So we are getting there. We're getting there. I feel like I talked about this in therapy. She made me feel better. She was like, you're going to turn 30. And you'll wake up the next day and it will just be another day. And I'm trying to remember that. I almost feel like I just want to turn it so that it's happened and it's done. I don't know if anyone who is 29 is feeling that way. 29 is the weirdest age ever. I feel like people say that for every age in your 20s, but I can say pretty confidently like 29 is the weirdest age because you're kind of out of your 20s, but you're not quite into your 30s yet, obviously, and everyone is doing something different. So anyways, I'm going on a tangent. We are going to quickly run through housekeeping, and then I will get into today's episode, which is the 5 best financial decisions that I have made in my 20s. Just like last week, these sort of run the gamut. Some of them you may not be surprised about. I don't know if you'll be surprised by any of them, but I think this would be a really great roundup for anyone who, whether you're new or returning or you've been around the block for quite some time, I think it's just a good roundup of some great financial lessons. Anyways, housekeeping. First things first, as always, you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard using the code podcast1. This is a podcast exclusive code. If you ever have an issue with it, please send me an email. I'm happy to get you sorted. There's always a way. I have had a few people who say the code doesn't work or isn't valid. I've checked. It is. Worst case scenario is it just refund you $10 if you go through with the purchase and you have an issue. So please, please, please just send me an email. Don't be shy if that ever happens. Next, if you are looking for a tool, but you're not super thrilled or excited about the personal finance dashboard, maybe it feels like a little too much, you can check out the basic budgeting template, which I have very specifically designed to make things easier when you are just getting started on your financial journey. You can also check out my financial independence planner, which is a one-stop shop for navigating how much you need to save and figuring out and answering the how much question when it comes to planning for retirement. Career planning specifically, I think, is a really important part of that. And also thinking about, or hopefully planning to retire before you reach your 60s or 70s, because I know that is a goal that a lot of us want to reach. I also want to let you guys know, I'm currently working on a real estate investment template, which I'll say is a little teaser. There's no teaser. I have recently decided that I'm going to potentially explore a real estate investment, not for primary living, but more for just like renting out. I have not done any of the math. I have not seriously moved any money or thought about this at all. It is last week, this came up across my desk of a friend of a friend who did something similar on Cape Cod, which is likely where I would do it, and has had a lot of success in the rental market going forward for this summer. So it piqued my interest. I don't know if it is at all possible, plausible, going to happen, whatever, but I'm thinking about it. So more to come. But obviously, you know me, I'm going to run the numbers every which way. I've been in touch with a woman who is like a real estate investor, and she's actually kind of helping me a little bit put this template together. So food for thought, if you are someone who is interested in that, more to come. If you have thoughts, opinions, suggestions, etc., please send them to me nice and neat in an email. Okay, I think that's all the housekeeping for now. Oh, also want to let you know, for my birthday every year, I do put the templates on sale. So if you want to wait 2 weeks or a week and a half, they'll be on sale for 25% off. If you're listening to this outside of the realm of like when it's going up, plus or minus 2 weeks, just use the code podcast1, although that does only work for the personal finance dashboard, and the sale for my birthday will be on everything. Anyways, let's get into the episode. So, as I mentioned, we are back with another best of my 20s episode, and I'm going to be going through the best financial decisions that I made in my 20s. I have definitely had quite the financial journey over the last few years, and I'm very happy, obviously, with where I am landing as I enter my 30s. Most of the progress I've made, though, has happened over the last 3 to 4 years. So this is largely due to the success of building my business. So I will obviously get into that as part of these decisions that I share. Not all of the success is due to my business, but because I have a business, I've been able to make more money. But because I have good financial habits, I've actually put that money to use and made sure that it's done what it needs to do for me. I do want to emphasize, though, and be very clear as I go through all of this, because I do sit on this YouTube channel and on my podcast and talk about how I crossed the millionaire threshold before I turned 30. And I'm very, very proud of that. And I do think it's possible if you are a creator or you make decent money in your 20s. I don't think it's possible in low-paying jobs. Obviously, I'm going to be very honest about that. But I do think it's more possible than you think, especially if you're in your early 20s. However, I want to share that this was not always how it was, okay? Because as I said, most of the progress that I have seen has happened over the last couple of years. And there were a few years in my early 20s specifically where I had no plans, no strategy, and no idea what I was doing. And this is normal, okay? It took me a while to actually figure out what needed to happen in order to actually see true financial progress. And I remember distinctly having a phone call with my dad. It was on my lunch break at work. And I was asking him how it was going to ever be possible for me to comfortably afford life. I just didn't understand. This was in my first job. I was making like $60K a year. And the math was not mathing. And I was trying to calculate, like, do I go back to grad school? Do I go try to climb the corporate ladder? Do I need to take this test or that test? Or what am I going to do to just make more money? This was literally 2017. I don't even think TikTok existed yet. And the career path that I'm in today quite literally did not exist. So when we think back, that was like 8 years ago, 8 years ago at this point. Think about what could happen, in the next 5 to 10 years. We have no idea what the world is going to look like. Things will change in ways that we don't even know about yet. So it's really important to emphasize that, like, things can happen and change quickly. And it's normal if you kind of feel like you're fumbling around a little bit. Obviously, I figured my shit out. But it did take me the entire duration of my 20s. And I think that there's this weird notion, specifically, and I don't even want to call out Gen Z because I think it sort of applies to everyone now on social media. But there's this weird notion that you need to accomplish everything by the time you turn 25. Like, I do think because of social media, Gen Z has this strange relationship with aging because of the internet. Like, I think the internet has skewed people's perceptions of age, timelines for accomplishing things, career paths, and the like. But like at 25, you're still a baby. And at 25, I thought I knew everything. I also thought I was super mature. But at 25, you don't know anything quite yet. Like, you still have, your brain is just barely fully developing, and you have a couple of years post-grad to get your footing. But you haven't hit your stride yet at 25. Like, you still have so much time. And I remember being 25 and people said that to me, and I felt like I was running out of time to accomplish things. And now, being a couple years ahead, I look back and I'm like, the people who tell me that were right. I know it's something you have to experience on your own, but I challenge you, if you're like 25, 24, 26, whatever, in that demo, to take what us elders say with like a little bit of truth, okay? Like I said, I thought that I knew everything at 25, but like, you don't have to have your entire life and all of your finances figured out that early in your life. Yeah, you have to be responsible and you have to be making smart choices, but it's okay if you don't hit threshold after threshold after threshold at that point in time. Financial progress takes years, and it's taken me these 8 years to get where I am now. And I even feel like my timeline and journey has been accelerated because of my business. Like, if I didn't have my business, I would not be in this current position. So you have to give yourself the time to figure things out, to move the needle, and to actually make the progress, to see the decisions through, and let the financial progress happen, because it does not happen in a year. You can move things in a year. You can start to see the wheels turn in a year, but that unlock, it just takes a little bit of time. So I say all this because I want to be clear up front that if you're listening to this and you feel like you've made a lot of the same decisions, or you're feeling behind or whatever, you got to give it some time. So anyways, let's get into it. So number one, and I know this is never what anybody wants to hear, was living at home and reducing my rent for as long as possible. So I lived at home for about 3 months post grad. And when I look back, I wish I stayed at home longer. Like that is one of my biggest financial regrets, is moving out of my parents' house too soon, because I feel like I was very lucky to be able to live at my parents' house and commute into Boston. And I just didn't recognize it at the time. However, when I did move out, I kept my rent under $1,000 for the 3 years that I lived in Boston, which was a feat. That was not something that was the norm. And I did this by living with roommates and in very, very small spaces and making sacrifices on my living space. So in my first apartment, I basically lived in a closet. I talk about this in my books. I don't recommend you do this. It wasn't very fun. But at the time, it didn't matter for me because back then, and this was in 2017 and 2018, we were in the office 5 days a week. Like work from home wasn't real. That did not exist at the time. That didn't really exist pre-COVID, honestly. I remember there was a point where I had asked for a Friday work from home and they looked at me like I had 10 heads. So I didn't really spend a ton of time at home, and I didn't need space for a desk or like a work from home setup. In my next apartment, so I had 2 apartments in Boston. So this was my second and final apartment in Boston. I lived with 3 other girls, so there was 4 of us total. We shared 1 bathroom, and this apartment was better and like a little bit bigger, even though I had roommates, but I didn't feel like I had any space to call my own outside of my bedroom. So like I just spent most of the time in my apartment outside of work in my room, which I didn't really like. Then obviously COVID happened, and COVID was a blessing in disguise for me because it was another catalyst for me to end up moving home. And I was able to get a reprieve from rent for about 14 or so months. And basically all the money that I was earning at work, I put into my savings. And then also at this time, I was able to focus on Break Your Budget because I wasn't commuting. My routines looked different and we all just had a little bit more time. But keeping my rent low and also living at home and like pulling the trigger and making the decision to live at home, which I'm very grateful and lucky for, I recognize, was able to free up more space to save and invest early and quickly. Because obviously without your living expense, which is the biggest expense you'll have, that's just money that you can put towards literally all of your savings and investments or other things. Your rent and your living expenses are always, always, always going to be the highest expense that you have, always. So reducing it early and for as long as possible is a really great strategy, obviously, to free up space and save. And I know not everybody is able to live at home. I'm very grateful that I was able to do that and that my parents made space for me because it really did financially make a big difference. And I feel like financially put me ahead because I didn't have those expenses for that period of time. But also, I made the conscious decision when I was paying rent to make those living sacrifices. Like I could have paid a little bit more and had a better apartment or less roommates or lived in a different area. And I chose not to because I valued the financial security that came with it. So just food for thought. I know that like in 2025 and beyond, paying under $1,000 for rent is not realistic. But remember, this was 7-8 years ago. So if you are able to live at home, okay? If you are a recent college grad and you want to move to the city, don't do it. Give yourself a year at home if you're able to. Only a year. It is a temporary period of time. You have so much time to move out. And once you move out, the likelihood that you are going to be moving back home is much lower. It's a small, short-term sacrifice in the grand scheme of life that can have an enormous financial impact. And if I didn't live at home, I would not have reached my 100K target at 25, period. Like there's no way that that would have happened. So that first 100K is the hardest, and it can be made a lot easier if you live at home, if you're able to. If you're not able to, get a roommate. You have to make sacrifices on your living situation. I think, again, the internet too makes it seem like people aren't doing that. Most people are doing that. Most people all throughout their 20s live with roommates, live with a partner, live in, older apartments, maybe live in an area a little further outside of the city than they want it to be. Like these are short-term sacrifices. So it's not going to be forever. But if you want to see that progress, reducing your living expenses is a great way to do it. Okay. Number 2, starting a business, specifically Break Your Budget. So I always knew some way or somehow I was going to be an entrepreneur. Did I think I was going to be like an influencer? No. And some of my friends and I, we all joke about it. Like Some of them have said to me, like, we always knew you were going to be successful, but we didn't think you would be an influencer. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. But hey, when life serves you an opportunity, it's your job to seize it. I think it goes without saying, obviously, that Break Your Budget has changed my life. Like, I've earned almost $2 million from this business. Hopefully, I'll cross that benchmark within the next, like, I think 9 months. I don't know. I have to look at my numbers. By the end of 2025, if I have a really good next 6 months, but things have been changing a little bit, so we'll see. I look back and I can't believe how literally insane that is. Like, that's actually crazy. I remember when I was just getting started and I signed my first budgeting client, and I literally could not believe it. Like, I got my first brand deal. It was $500. It felt like $1,000,000. Like, those beginning wins when you start a business feel euphoric because it's like, oh my God, this is a sign that all this time, effort, mental energy I've put into something, like, it could actually work. Starting a business changed my financial life in ways that a 9 to 5 could literally never. And you've probably heard this before, but at a 9 to 5 job, your income is capped and you earn your salary. It's consistent, so that's a win. And maybe you get a raise each year, but you are not really going to be moving past that. And it takes years to actually see true, tangible salary growth unless you constantly change jobs or you're in a very high growth company or role. In business, though, you have a different type of control over your income. And it's obviously not entirely in your control, especially with a social media business, because reach and algorithms do play a role in your ability to earn 110%. But if you want to make more money, in theory, like, you can just work more or change your strategy. And those are things that you have control over. Whereas where you work more at your 9 to 5, like, you're not getting paid more. So the timeline is just a little bit different. I have earned way more over the last 5 years building Break Your Budget than I would have ever been able to possibly earn in a 9 to 5. And I've saved more in the last 5 years than I would have earned cumulatively over the 5 years working a 9 to 5. So I would not be in the financial position that I'm in today without Break Your Budget. Also, period. Like, if you've been looking for a reason to start your business, whatever that may look like, this is your sign. You should totally do it. It may not always be easy and it may not happen right away, but it is possible for you. Okay, moving on to the next one. Choosing a major that provided me with lucrative career options. This one might be controversial. I don't think it should be, but I feel like people are really sensitive about their majors. I majored in finance, which I think is the best major outside of, like, economics. Like, if I could go back and do college again, I would have been an econ major. I think finance and economics, if you want to go into, like, a corporate business world, are the best majors to choose, or some type of engineering. You know, obviously we're moving in, like, a very tech forward direction. I chose finance because I knew it was going to be a major that would open career doors for me early on that other majors couldn't. And this made it a lot easier for me to get a job right after college. I don't necessarily feel like your major is not the most important thing, but it can help a lot, especially in those early job applications when you're just entering the job market. I also feel like I don't need to go back to school to get a higher degree or a different degree to make me a competitive applicant in the job market, because finance will always be a competitive major. And the experience you can get with a finance degree is pretty cross-functional and, like, can be used in a lot of different ways. So I actually saw a creator years ago, and it will always stick with me, post a video because she was talking about how she regrets her college major. And I think she majored in, like, marketing or communications or something like that, which are by no means bad majors. I'm not insinuating that at all. But she said that she wished she majored in finance because a person with a finance degree can get a marketing job, but a person with a marketing degree can't get a finance job. And as I look back, I realize how true this is. Like, it is kind of true. Finance and economics are very diverse degrees, and it really does open up a lot of professional doors for you. Or I want to throw in engineering of sorts, like something like that, computer science. I don't know, because I didn't do that. But even with a computer science degree, like I feel like you could get a finance job, but with a marketing degree, you can't really get either. Obviously, I know there are going to be outliers, and someone's probably going to send me a message saying they majored in marketing and now they work in STEM. Awesome for you, but that's not the norm. And again, I'm not trying to knock marketing. It's just the first one that comes up as an example. I don't think your major is the most important thing ever, and it really only matters in those first few years. But those first few years can be made much easier if you choose a major that's actually like usable in the job market, or diverse in the job market is probably a much better word than usable. Excuse me. So for me, like I learned a lot of life skills that have helped me achieve all of my financial goals through my major. And I also like really never had a hard time finding a job. So food for thought, if you are a young person in college listening to this, which I don't know if there are that many of you in that age range, but if you have like a sibling, a cousin, a friend, I always tell my younger cousins like major, if you're going to pick a major, choose business, but like choose finance or econ or engineering, because they just open the most amount of doors, and the more options you have, the better, especially in a wonky job market. Okay, moving on to number 4, creating the habit of tracking my expenses. I'm going to be a broken record, but I cannot do this episode without saying that. Tracking my expenses is the best financial habit and financial move that I've made and will continue to make going forward forever. I will always track my expenses because it gives me insight into where my money's going. It keeps me on track for my financial goals, and it makes me feel a lot more confident about all of the financial decisions that I make. I know it's one of those habits that feels really annoying to get into, but it really does make such a difference. And I think that if I didn't track my expenses, I probably would have inflated my lifestyle a lot more over the last few years, and also probably just spent a lot more money in general, because it's easy to not realize how much money you spend when you don't track your expenses. Like if I skip a week, which happens occasionally, like I find that I end up spending more, or like feeling like I'm spending a lot more money and just being a little bit more frivolous because I don't have that accountability built in. So I think that without context of how much you're spending, it's really easy to lose control or line of sight into what you're spending on and if it's actually adding value to your life. So if you aren't tracking your expenses, you're spending more than you think because your brain is hardwired to protect you, and you will lie to yourself about what you're truly spending. I see it all the time. So track your expenses. Obviously, you can do this with the PFD or the basic budgeting template. Both of them are linked in the show notes. Moving on to the last one. This one is calculating my financial independence in work optional numbers. And I know that this is something that I actually just did this year. If you've been following since the beginning of the year, like I hit my net worth milestone and then decided to calculate these numbers. And I wish I had done it sooner. So I'm keeping it on this list because it's something that I wish I did at 25. It provides such clear guidance on how much you need to save. Like I think that I get asked at least 5 times a day, how much should I be putting into my high yield savings account? How much should I be putting into my retirement accounts? How much do I need to do this, that, or the other thing? When you calculate your FIRE numbers, you can answer that question yourself. I can't answer it for you because I don't know your life, right? But you know your life, and you can use the tools available to you to figure out, based off of what you're earning and what you're projecting to earn, and what your expenses are, how much do you need to save to hit these certain thresholds? And is that a realistic target for you? And if not, when you make adjustments, what do those numbers change to? The first milestone, and there are a couple different milestones for FIRE. The first milestone is coast FIRE. So coast FIRE means that you have invested enough money to essentially coast to retirement. So by 65, you will have, basically when you hit coast FIRE, you've invested enough money that by 65, you have enough to retire, so you don't have to continue investing once you reach that threshold. And then basically you only technically, unless you have other financial goals, need to earn enough money to cover your expenses. The other milestone is barista FIRE. So this is where you've invested enough money to work just part-time, and you can draw down some of your investments and also, work a job earning like $30K a year to cover the rest of your expenses. The other one is traditional FIRE. So this is like true retiring early, meaning you've invested enough to never have to work again. I would love to hit that, but it's very hard to do that depending on what your lifestyle is and what you want your lifestyle to be. Ultimately, I just want to become work optional. I want to have the option to take a year off or to go take a month or two and travel and to not worry about it. And I'm working on building that life through this business in a couple of different ways. Like, I'm building a business where I'm able to earn a lot more, comparatively speaking, to a 9 to 5, which helps just take the pressure off if the landscape changes. Like, would I need to go back to a high pressure job? Would I need to go back to a traditional job? Maybe not, if I've earned enough to reach some of these targets. But also, I just don't want to feel chained down or have golden handcuffs at a 9 to 5 job. Like, I've had my taste of freedom and I don't want to go back to it. So knowing these numbers has just empowered me on my financial journey to stay motivated and to keep doing what I'm doing. And it really does inform other financial decisions. Like, I'm not going to have a huge giganto wedding because I would much rather use that money to like literally buy back my life. Or, when I'm thinking about real estate, like, how does this play into my ability to retire early? Would it generate income for me? Would it be a place that I would want to live in? Like, these are all things that are informed by this information. And when you know your numbers, you can also make career planning decisions, which I think is so underrated and not talked about enough. You probably don't need to work a high stress corporate job for the rest of your life. You just need to run these numbers and really see how much money do you need to put towards your various accounts yearly and for how long. And you may be able to retire a lot earlier than you think, or at least not even semi-retire, but like not kill yourself at work and be able to work a less stressful job. So I highly recommend calculating your FIRE numbers and seeing what that looks like for you. Obviously, I do have a template. I built that specifically for myself because I feel like a lot of the FIRE resources online are not straightforward. They're not easy to understand. And the calculators are like really annoying. Like, they're not giving you that clear picture. So I built my own calculator because I wanted the clear picture. And it works great. So that's also in the show notes if you are interested. So those are my top 5 financial decisions I've made in my 20s. First being, reducing my rent and living at home for as long as I could. Starting Break Your Budget, obviously. Choosing a major that provided me with lucrative career options. Creating the habit of tracking my expenses and calculating my FIRE number. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have a really awesome financial decision that you've made, I would love to hear it. If you're interested in any of these and would like me to elaborate on them as well, please let me know because I would be happy to do that in like a shorter YouTube video. And with that, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.